Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the debrief for the 2018 US Grand Prix. And what a stunning race that was. Action and drama all the way to the flag and in some cases beyond. But before we get into any of that, let's start by having a look at the race result. It was Kimi Raikkonen who took victory for Ferrari, 1.2 seconds up the road from Max Verstappen. What a comeback from him. We'll be talking about both of those later, as we will Lewis Hamilton, who finished in third place, 2.3 seconds off the lead, with title rival Sebastian Vettel in fourth and teammate Valtteri Bottas in fifth. Nico Hülkenberg took sixth for Renault, with teammate Carlos Sainz just behind in seventh. Sergio Perez claimed eighth for Force India, with Brendan Hartley ninth and Marcus Ericsson 10th. But there is more to that story, which once again I will cover a little bit later in the video. Stoffel Van Dorn came home in 11th place for McLaren, with Pierre Gasly in 12th and Sergei Sirotkin in 13th, and Lance Stroll in the second Williams brought up the rear of the field in 14th. And your retirements list for the US Grand Prix then was Charles Leclerc, Daniel Ricciardo, Romain Grosjean, Fernando Alonso, and Esteban Ocon and Kevin Magnussen were both disqualified from the race. So it was Kimi Raikkonen who took the win in Austin, then his first since Australia 2013, 113 races between wins. It's been a long time coming and it was a superb drive from the Finn. He got the jump off the line on Lewis Hamilton into turn one and managed his tyres and race to perfection, taking a well-deserved win, a real favourite with many F1 fans. Now, during the race, I tweeted that Ferrari had screwed up on strategy by not pitting under the virtual safety car, but I've got to hold my hands up and say, how wrong was I? Hindsight is of course a wonderful thing, but it turned out that pitting at that stage of the race would have been a mistake, as it more than likely would have forced him into a two-stopper, as of course we saw with Lewis Hamilton. But he managed his tyres brilliantly, held off a charging Lewis Hamilton after the Brits' first pit stop, and then after the Finn made his stop, he was able to reel him back in as well. And I've got to say, how smart was that dummy into the pits? For me, Kimi Raikkonen did absolutely everything he could for Ferrari and for Sebastian Vettel in that race. And at the end of it all, got just what he deserved. But speaking after the Grand Prix, Kimi played down the win, typically, but said he was happy to take the opportunity to prove people wrong. The Finn stated, "It's not a big deal for me. It's a much bigger deal for a lot of the people. If it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it really doesn't change my life one bit. I'm happy we are here and that we win, but I think the biggest difference is the way people look at you. If you look at people in a different way, if they win or not, it doesn't make a lot of difference in my mind. But obviously, I'm happy just proving some people wrong is enough fun for me. I think this weekend we've been pretty solid in many ways, and I had a good feeling with the car. We'll see what happens in the next race, but so far, I'm not complaining a lot. For sure, we'll have fun tonight, and then we go next week for the next one." It just all came together for him and he absolutely deserves all the plaudits he's getting for that win. Now, is some of that down to the emotion, if you like, of seeing him win again after so long? Yeah, perhaps it is. But there is no denying that his race was flawless, and I, for one, am so pleased to see him back on the top step of that podium. And I'm also happy, as many are, that he got a win before leaving Ferrari at the end of this season. Of course, there are still 3 races to go, but that could well have been his last victory in Formula 1. But what a race and what a win. Don't worry, I will be talking about Max Verstappen when I get to my driver of the day, so that gives that away. But with Lewis Hamilton finishing third and Sebastian Vettel snatching fourth late on, the title fight, if we can still call it that, moves on to Mexico. With Vettel starting down in fifth following his penalty and Hamilton on pole, it did look odds on that barring a comeback from the German, the title would be decided in Austin. And after Raikkonen took that lead into turn one, it really did look as though things were starting to swing Vettel's way, for this race at least. But later on in that lap, the German went wheel to wheel with Daniel Ricciardo, and as those front wheels touched, the Ferrari once again found himself in a spin and dropping down the field. Now that put the ball firmly back in Hamilton's court. However, after Ricciardo pulled over with yet more mechanical issues, the virtual safety car was deployed and Mercedes, telling Hamilton to do the opposite of Raikkonen, made the call to make an earlier pit stop, and that forced him into a 2-stop strategy. As I said earlier, at the time that stop seemed to make total sense. But as it turned out, and with the benefit of hindsight, it didn't. The Mercedes began suffering with rear tyre blistering, and that allowed Raikkonen and Verstappen to close in. And after making a second stop, the Brit found himself 12 seconds off the lead, and with it all to do. But despite his best attempts, and despite trying a great move around the outside of Max Verstappen late on, wheel-to-wheel stuff, brilliant to watch, he had to ultimately settle for third and miss the chance to wrap up the title. And discussing that strategy after the race, Lewis Hamilton stated, "We made it so hard for ourselves. I'm not really quite sure how the strategy ended up like that. 12 seconds was way too far to catch up. Naturally, I thought we would be able to do better. It's a little bit of a surprise, but you can't always get it right. Once we had done a stop on lap 11, we knew that we would be doing a 2-stop. When I came out, I had to catch Kimi, I was 9 seconds behind. Caught him, tyres were dead. He came out from his stop and was immediately catching me as he had fresher tyres. Then I came out after the last stop and had 12 seconds to catch up. I'm not quite sure all the reasoning for it, but probably in hindsight we would have started on the Ultra. There is a performance difference at the start and he had the better tyre, so I wasn't able to keep up with him in the first stint. And Sebastian Vettel admitted after the race that although he was happy to see Kimi Raikkonen take the win, he was disappointed with his race despite recovering to 4th after that early spin. He also gave his view on that contact with Daniel Ricciardo, with the German saying, "I have mixed emotions. I'm really happy for Kimi, but I'm not happy with my race. I must have been in his blind spot. He must not have seen me. The corner was tightening and I couldn't really get out of it anymore and we made contact. It's obviously a shame, it was a big loss for me to come back, but I'm happy for Kimi, really. It's been tough weeks for the team and the tough times don't seem to be stopping for me. It should have been a better day. I am not happy with my race and I'm disappointed for letting the team down today. It has not been an easy time for me lately and bad results are part of the game." I will add to this as well, by the way, that I completely agree with the stewards' decision not to take any action against either driver. For me, 100% first lap racing incident. So, Lewis Hamilton didn't seal the title in Austin, but let's be honest, it's only really a matter of time, isn't it? He now sits 70 points clear of Sebastian Vettel in that championship, meaning that the Germans simply must win all the remaining 3 races and hope that Hamilton scores no more than 4 points between now and the flag falling in Abu Dhabi. The drama wasn't just reserved for the race though, as both Esteban Ocon and Kevin Magnussen found themselves disqualified from the Grand Prix following technical infringements. Get your rule books out, Magnussen was found in breach of Article 30.5 of the sporting regulations after his car consumed more than the allowed 105 kilograms of fuel during the race. And on Twitter, the Dane said that they had exceeded the limit by just 0.1 kilograms, and despite accepting the decision, he was frustrated by the fact that he was, quote, racing in Formula fuel saving rather than Formula 1, a sentiment echoed by team boss Gunther Steiner. And Esteban Ocon was disqualified from that final result after breaching Article 5.1.4 of the technical regulations, with the stewards finding that the fuel mass flow exceeded the maximum allowed, which is 100 kilograms per hour, and that was all the way back on lap 1 of the race. Again, over social media, Ocon was understandably frustrated after losing out on some solid points. He said, quote, "Getting disqualified in the end for a stupid reason is probably the worst feeling ever. Our mistake." And it was a shame for both drivers really, as they managed to pick up points, but as both have pretty much alluded to, those are the rules and the team broke them. And generally with these kind of technical infringements, they are pretty much open and shut cases. What that decision did do though is put Renault in a very strong position in the battle to be best of the rest. Aside from anything else, it was a really impressive performance from both Nico Hülkenberg and Carlos Sainz to bring their cars home 6th and 7th. And pretty comfortably as well, I think it's fair to say, and that's despite Sainz's penalty for keeping his position after leaving the track at turn 1 on the first lap. And as I said in yesterday's live stream, by the way, I totally disagree with that decision. Frankly, it didn't look any different to what Sebastian Vettel did just ahead of him, and when you've got 20 cars making their way through turn 1, and you look back and you consider the French Grand Prix as an example and all those cars shooting off at turn 1 and turn 2, it does seem very harsh. But despite that 5-second time penalty, he still ended up in 7th place and wasn't that far off his teammate either. So a really solid drive from Carlos Sainz, and pushing that penalty aside, a really good race for Renault. And with Magnussen getting disqualified, they've significantly extended their lead in that fight for 4th. Some other talking points then before I get on to my driver of the day. First off, no, I'm not going to slam Mercedes for using team orders during the race. It is pointless. Hamilton was on a different strategy to Bottas, and after both his stops, had the fresher tyres on and was therefore quicker. It was a no-brainer. Ferrari did it as Kimi Raikkonen was trying to go for the win. They got Vettel to get out of his way so he wasn't held up, and any team would have done the same in that position. Romain Grosjean dodged a race ban for Mexico after the stewards handed him just 1 penalty point for his collision with Charles Leclerc on lap 1, which saw the Sauber in a spin. It also led to Grosjean's car being damaged and he had to retire, but after investigating the incident, the stewards handed the Frenchman a 3-place grid drop for Mexico and 1 penalty point on his super licence, taking his total up to 10 out of the maximum 12, meaning that should he find himself in trouble again this weekend in Mexico, he could well receive a race ban for Brazil. It should also be added though that after the Mexican Grand Prix, some of his points will expire as they will have been on his licence for a year. so he has got to keep it clean in Mexico. Lance Stroll also found himself being penalised during the Grand Prix after a collision with Fernando Alonso. On a chaotic first lap, Stroll found himself on the inside of Alonso and the two came to blows with the McLaren receiving a hefty whack and a fair amount of damage, which ended his race. The stewards came to the conclusion that Stroll was fully to blame for the incident after he, quote, left the track and while rejoining at turn 4 made contact with Alonso. Stroll received a drive-through penalty for the clash and 2 penalty points were added to his super licence. And as I touched on earlier, there was yet more misery for Daniel Ricciardo after he was forced to retire once again with mechanical issues. According to Christian Horner, it was a battery issue that was similar to the one that surfaced in Bahrain, where the Aussie was also forced to retire. And Horner also added that Ricciardo was so frustrated after the retirement that he put his fist through a wall behind the scenes. For the second consecutive weekend, the Aussie showing an understandable outpouring of frustration. And as Stewart said during last night's livestream, it says a lot when these issues can break someone like Daniel Ricciardo. I mean, it's getting beyond a joke now. What is that, his 7th retirement this season? And that doesn't even take into account the penalties he's had prior to the race weekends due to mechanical problems. Looking at the last 5 race weekends, in Italy he started 19th after a raft of power unit changes and still retired after another mechanical problem struck. In Russia he was dropped to 18th after taking yet more power unit elements. His car let him down during qualifying in Japan and he ended up starting 15th. And then this in Austin. I can completely understand his frustration, and it is well beyond a joke now. I bet the poor guy can't wait for 2018 to be over. Right, on to my driver of the day then, and it should come as no surprise really. 1, because I've already given it away in this video, and 2, because it was a stunning drive. He was voted as the official driver of the day by the fans, and he's mine as well, and that is Max Verstappen. He started the race down in 18th place on the grid and fought his way up to finish in a brilliant 2nd place, 12 months on, of course, from being stripped of a podium in Austin last year. By the end of the first lap, he'd made his way up to 9th place and was already running 5th by lap 7. Yet another stunning opening few laps and another great drive overall. Now, I'm taking nothing away from him when I say this, but it has to be said and it has to be taken into account. Yes, he did, for want of a better term, look in to some of those positions. Vettel spinning, for example. But that should not detract from his drive. It's not even just that. The way he managed his car and tyres was solid. Many, including me, expected that he would have to make a second stop after putting the super softs on at the first pit stop, but he didn't. He managed to look after those tyres as well as keep the pace up to stay close to Raikkonen and fend off Lewis Hamilton. And as I said earlier, that scrap with Hamilton towards the end of the Grand Prix was, wow, edge of the seat stuff. It was brilliant to watch. A quick couple of honourable mentions as well. Kimi Raikkonen absolutely deserves a shout. A great drive from the Finn, as I covered earlier. And Renault were my team of the day, if you like. Both drivers did a great job and they brought some important points home for the team. Before I go then, let's have a look at the championship table, starting with the drivers. Lewis Hamilton, as mentioned, is now 70 points clear of Sebastian Vettel and can wrap the title up in Mexico. Kimi Raikkonen not all that far off his teammate. He moves up to 3rd place, 221 points for him, with Valtteri Bottas in 4th on 217. Max Verstappen stays 5th on 191 and closes in on Valtteri Bottas, but Daniel Ricciardo could have drifted a little bit now in 6th. That fight for best of the rest has taken another turn, with Nico Hülkenberg moving up to 7th on 61 points, Sergio Perez just behind on 57. Despite being disqualified from the race, Kevin Magnussen keeps himself right in there with 53 points, and somehow Fernando Alonso is still in that top 10 on 50 points. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes are still top, 563 points on the board for them, and that gap to Ferrari is now 66 points. Red Bull obviously stay 3rd in a little bit of a no-man's land situation there, but behind them, Renault are now 22 points clear of Haas. McLaren stays 6th, but are now just 9 points clear of Force India in 7th. Brendan Hartley picking up those couple of points for Toro Rosso moved them to 32 points, and Marcus Ericsson's point for Sauber takes them to 28, and Williams remain rock bottom of the championship on just 7 points. That is it then for the US Grand Prix debrief. And what did you make of the race? Were you happy to see Kimi Raikkonen take that win? I'd be interested to know as well where you rate this race compared to others this season. And of course, who was your driver of the day? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Now, I just want to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for helping the channel reach 50,000 subscribers. I really can't believe it. It is just so much more than I ever believed the channel could achieve. And I really am so grateful for all of your support. And that's whether you've been a follower of the channel for the last 16 months or the last 16 minutes. It doesn't matter. I really do appreciate all of you. And so thank you for every single like, for every comment, and for every subscription. I really can never say it enough. So here's one more. Thank you. I will be back soon with more content as ever. In the meantime, though, you can follow me on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.